All right, good evening and welcome everyone to Syracuse University at the Sundance Film Festival. I am Mark Lodato, the new dean of the SI Newhouse School of Public Communications, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be with you all here tonight. Before we get our wonderful evening underway, I think it's important to give you some context that since his inauguration in April of 2014, Chancellor Kent Syverud has initiated several measures that honor the Haudenosaunee tribe. Among them is the university's policy of opening public events with an acknowledgement of the Onondaga Nation. So with that, I want to make sure we are all aware that I acknowledge with respect to the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. A wonderful way to begin this event. And with that, I want to say good evening and welcome to all of our panelists, our moderator, our alumni, and our friends who are here with us tonight. And of course, we really all hoped that we would be in Park City. And I have to tell you, it was about a year ago that I was going through the interview process with Syracuse University and the Newhouse School. And I was hearing about all these amazing events in New York City and in Los Angeles and in Park City. And I really was looking forward to being there on this evening this year and am missing that. I am, many of you are from California and Los Angeles, I believe, and I am a West Coaster at heart. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, started skiing when I was 4 years old up at Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows and all those places around Tahoe. So this was a marquee experience that I was looking forward to, and I am counting on that we will be able to get back there next year and all be together, because from what I hear, it is quite the event, and there is a rich history of networking and gathering among the Syracuse alumni at Park City and the Sundance Festival. So I'm looking forward to that. But I do want to welcome all of the alums who are joining us tonight and say a special welcome to the Newhouse alumni. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. I can tell you I have an exciting job ahead of me. The Newhouse School is rich with a tradition of excellence, and I feel honored to be able to lead this school in its next era. And there's much to do. There's a lot of need within the space of communication for thought leadership and entrepreneurial approach and new expansion of student opportunities and really elevating the Newhouse brand. So as you get to know me, you will hear more about these ideas, and I'll look forward to engaging with all of you in the months and years ahead. Now, of course, this event we do not do alone. We do it in close partnership with Visual and Performing Arts at Syracuse University, another one of our wonderful schools and colleges on campus, who together with Newhouse has invested in the Sundance experience and bringing all of us together on an annual basis. And we could not do this event tonight without all of them. Of course, we'd love to be on Main Street and at the Spur, but that is not the case, but it's nice to get together virtually. And I'd like to take this moment to say a big thank you and recognize Dean Michael Tick of VPA. He too has been a wonderful supporter of this event, as have his faculty, staff, and alumni, and we're excited to be able to partner with our friends at VPA. And a special thanks to Michael, who's been so welcoming to me in my arrival here at Syracuse University. And the other important thing to note is this event would not be possible, the Sundance experience would not be possible without the support from our own alumnus and university trustee, Jimmy Kuhn, from the classes of 70 and 72. And it's through his generosity that all graduating seniors and juniors at Syracuse University's film programs have had the opportunity to attend the 2021 Sundance Film Festival and the Sundance Ignite program, all free of charge. So Jimmy, a big thanks to you. I'm hoping that you are with us here tonight, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. Right now, though, I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator, the one and only Owen Shapiro. Owen has been with Syracuse University for more than 45 years, very impressive, and has taught generations of SU film students. Owen's leadership has been instrumental in bringing VPA's film programs to their position of national prominence. And he has also developed international educational opportunities in Prague and Italy. And in addition to his teaching, Owens is Owen is co-founder and artistic director, I want to get this right, of the Syracuse International Film Festival and associate editor for the Point of Contact publications. He, of course, is an award-winning experimental documentary filmmaker whose work has been showcased and honored at more than 30 film festivals worldwide. So our conference and our conversation tonight is in very good hands with Owen. So with that, Owen, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Dean. I think the comments you made about both VPA and Newhouse are really important and exciting for me after all these years to see the way we've been working together. I think that's really fantastic. And it's also good to see a bunch of friends. I think Erin's the only person here I don't know personally. So hi, Erin, glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I don't know about Edwards here, Rob. Here,
Hey.
I can barely recognize that that's who that is. Anyway,
Yes.
so I'm very pleased to be the moderator of this, and let me just introduce everybody to these four wonderful guests that we have. Rob is from 1985, is an American television and feature film screenwriter and producer. His writing includes the Disney animated feature films Treasure Planet and The Princess and the Frog, both of which were nominated for Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2009. Along with Ron Clements and John Musker, Edwards was awarded the Best Screenplay Award from the African American Film Critics Association for The Princess and the Frog. And most recently, he's been working on projects for Lionsgate and Marvel Studios. So everybody meet Rob. I hope I said all that right. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yes, yes, you did. Thanks.
Monica Levinson is from 1990 is president of Shivhan's Pictures. She is best known as a producer and production manager for Borat Subsequent Moviefilm 2020. I hope you all saw that film. It's really pretty amazing. In 2020, she was the AFI Movie of the Year award winning film for The Trial of the Chicago 7, which she produced. And in 2016, she was producer for Captain Fantastic, which was nominated for an Oscar for Viggo Mortensen, and Trumbo, which also was nominated for an Oscar for Bryan Cranston. So that is Monica. Jim, 77, is an American film producer. As president of Pixar Animation Studios, he supervised Ratatouille and Up and Toy Story, Cars 2, Brave, Monsters Universe, Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, Cars 3, Coco, and Incredibles 2. Okay, as a producer, Jim has made live action Disney feature John Carter with director Andrew Stanton, and he was producer of Pixar's critically acclaimed and Oscar winner 2008 film WALL-E. Previous to all of this, he held positions at Industrial Light and Magic for 17 years. Didn't do much work there. And then finally, Erin Westerman of 2004 is president of production at Lionsgate Motion Picture Group. And among others, she is known for Extinction from 2018 and Don't Breathe 2016 and Long Shot 2019. She helped develop Rian Johnson's film Knives Out, an incredible film which you have to see if you haven't. Prior to joining Lionsgate, Westerman was head of creative development at Good Universe, where she worked on The Disaster Artist, Neighbors 2, and Always Be My Maybe. She spent 5 years as a production executive at Walt Disney Studios, where she oversaw the production of Cinderella and Into the Woods. So we have four truly amazing people here on this panel to deal with your questions, and they will provide answers. Let me start it off, if I can, by asking all four of you if you can at least respond to the question of how this pandemic that we're living through now, COVID-19, has affected your careers, and what do you think the future is going to be after we recover from this? So any one of the four of you want to begin, or should I just ask somebody?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
Why not?
Go ahead.
First, thanks for having us. What fun. And also cool to be on a panel that's only two white dudes. So anyway, so usually it's just me and whatever, but awesome. So,
We lost you.
oh,
Should we? Let's move on to somebody else for the moment until we get you back, Rob. Okay? Can you? I don't know if you can hear me or not. Okay, let's
jump in.
Monica, go ahead.
Sure, because I actually filmed during this time. I did. I'm no longer at Owen. I'm no longer at Shiv Hans. I actually left at the end of 2019, and because it was very demanding for me to be able to do that and produce Borat at the same time. So, and yeah, I mean, it was a massive pivot. I think that's the word of the year. Like we had to pivot. We had to figure out how to shoot during COVID, and I mean, the rest of my stuff, my development stuff, it's been going on, and obviously I see things that aren't getting made because of COVID. But we had no choice with Borat. We just had to finish it because we wanted to get it out before the election. So that was a real challenge, and we had to learn. I feel like I'm an epidemiologist. I text with people at Johns Hopkins, still daily. I feel like I need to be a part of the vaccination plan because I've been so involved. And I think we all are in this business. We're all trying to come up with a path forward. And, and that's what we had to do. We actually, the film industry has done an amazing job of keeping everybody safe on sets and being out there, because we really went to the nth degree to make sure that we kept everybody safe, because it's a huge responsibility to go out and bring crew and put people together, knowing that you're making that decision that could take their life. So we have to be safe. And so it's been, incredibly stressful, to work during COVID and make sure that people are safe. But I do feel like there's a path forward. It's just that, anything with massive crowd scenes and things like that are being pushed right now. And also there's a huge expense, it's like 18% added to the budget. And independent films aren't getting, there is no insurance if you shut down, even for flu claims right now. So that means a lot of the independent films, the people that are at Sundance every year, I love being there. And, I don't know how many people are going to be able to accomplish their work for next year's Sundance.
What do you think is you will have learned from this? That will be the future for you after this pandemic is over, because it will be over at some point. Maybe
it will be over, but we're going to keep some of these practices, I think, for a while. I don't think masking is going to go away on movie sets, especially if the flu is not going to be covered. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to keep people safe and keep people distant. And even once there's vaccinations, I think there's going to be a little bit more carefulness about craft service and all those things. So and what have I learned? I mean, I've just learned a lot about science and things that I don't want to know. I know that we're going to be facing something else in the future, and I'm just like, it makes me crazy and scared.
Okay. Yeah. Rob, let's get back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me this time?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Yeah, from a writing standpoint, there's two things that happened last year. One is, of course, nobody could go anywhere. So the one thing that was happening, and is still happening, is development. A lot of people that, couldn't go into production quickly, got into writing and development and stuff like that, which is actually good, because a lot of times, especially with the projects that I have, there's not a lot of lead time. So there was finally time to actually think in advance for projects. People were sending books around. People were sending, comic books. I do a lot of that kind of stuff. So there was that, and that was great. Second thing that happened last year was, of course, George Floyd, and the notion that there are different types of movies that we can make. I know that I had a couple of projects where people, I would pitch them. I had a project with Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan, and the studio pushback was, we don't think that Black people sell in action movies. And then quickly after Black Panther came out, they were like, "Hey Rob, whatever happened to that action movie that you had?" And I said, "We can't get Chadwick now. We might be able to have Michael B. But so that was another really nice paradigm shift that happened. For me too, I do a lot of animation, and I'm sure Jim can speak to it. Animation is largely just people in their homes now. A lot of people can work from home, so independent animation especially has actually picked up steam. And I think you saw, like, even some TV episodes, they would do an animated episode just so the cast itself could stay home and kind of record dialogue out of their cars. So yeah, it's been an interesting year.
Animation has become bigger and bigger and bigger every year, it seems. And I'm sure that, Jim, you want to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, animation's gotten very big, and there's, it's interesting. There's obviously, TV stations dedicated to it, but just the number of feature animation and with the streaming animation appetite and so forth. We've been, there's the good and the bad of the COVID. The good for us was we can work remotely, where, we don't have the same challenges, that Monica did, and people are working from their homes. We got up and going very quickly. We finished Soul 8 weeks after we were all kind of in lockdown. The biggest challenges we've had, we're getting some of the technical limitations, just some bandwidth things and so forth. And more than anything, people trying to deal with their kids at home. About a third of our workforce has kids at various ages, and that did a little productivity hit. So we were really lucky. I mean, there's no question about it. We've been able to keep running and keep things going. The bad side was theatrical, right? We everything shut down, and our whole business model is kind of based on theatrical exploitation. Soul came out, and it didn't make sense to release theatrically. Fortunately, we had Disney Plus to release to, but the business model for the cost of that kind of production, it doesn't really make a whole hell of a lot of sense for TV or streaming. So we're kind of battling that. The good news was, where people could go to theaters, I'll just use Soul as the example. In China, it's done about 53 million in box office, which puts it above Incredibles 2 as our most successful film in China. So where people can go to theaters, it's pretty robust. So I am infinitely optimistic that when people have vaccines and can go back to theaters and see other humans in person and things such as that the business will rebound. I can't, look, we've seen the death of theatrical cinema predicted so many times, starting about 1950. So I remain optimistic that it'll be a robust market for everybody, and as will the other areas. But that's been a tough one. I know that Disney feature animation, where Rob worked to do Princess and the Frog, is bringing out a picture called Raya, and they're going to release theatrically and drop to pay-per-view video on demand at the same time. And I, like Warner Brothers is now, and I suspect that model will persist in probably till the autumn, I'm guessing, something like that. Maybe I'm being optimistic to think that, but I'm bullish on the fact that we'll be back in theaters and see that happening again.
And you think people will be happy to go back to the theater?
Well, I certainly will be. Yeah, I think so. I'm just judging by how people in markets where they've opened up theaters again respond to it. I think there's something about getting out of the house, or something about the communal experience of that's different than, I mean, it's tough now. We've got these beautiful big screen TVs that are gorgeous, and the stuff looks great and everything. And they're not, obviously, our business, we have theatrical, and then it goes to streaming and TV and all the other exploitation that everybody's pictures do. But yeah, I think so. It's been declining in the US consistently, not so much in revenue as in ticket sales, because the ticket prices have gone up. So it's kind of masked that. Though conversely, particularly in Asia, the distribution has gone up enough to kind of sort of offset the drop in home video or DVDs and Blu-rays primarily. So it's a mixed bag for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just insert that I had 2 of my 3 movies that came out this year were slated for theatrical and had to go to streaming. And we actually, to do Borat in particular, we can't, like, the way that we have to test it is through screening and to audiences to get laughs, to hear the laughs. And it's just part of Sasha's process. It's always been part of, my process in terms of working with comedies. So we actually screened in New Zealand and we had no problems getting, big audiences. We zoomed into the room and people were thrilled to be seeing fresh content. They were anxious for it because they couldn't, everything they had was sort of old movies or something that was like, released from a year before that they were screening. So I do agree that I'm hoping that people will want to go back because they were really, dying to go to our screenings.
Yeah. Erin, what about you?
As someone who runs a live action theatrical distribution company, a job I took like a year before the pandemic hit, I was hit in all the ways that all of my fellow panelists were hit and then some. The place where I feel luckiest is that we as Lionsgate do not have our own streaming entity, which kind of allows us to sit in this middle ground of like, we can be entrepreneurial as it relates to distribution, which is, I think, a shift that we might start to see a lot of just as content finds the right place for distribution, because there's audiences for it. And now we're learning that we can meet them in different places. The complication that I haven't really solved yet, and I'm taking on a day-by-day basis, is like pre-pandemic, there was like a trade-off that you made for theatrical. You would maybe take less of a fee to bet on the upside of theatrical. And so like talent made decisions. It's the whole reason that streamers did these buyouts and overpaid to have it sit in streaming and not have it be a cultural moment. They never said that that was why, but we all know that it was why. And then B, in order to just buy out the back end. And I could like woo talent to theatrical because that was an alluring thing. And now wooing someone to theatrical is an unknown. And so the deal making process has become like truly the hardest part of my job. And then just trying to make decisions feel good to talent when there are no good options. Like as we've, as Monica has lived through, like at the when you don't have control of distribution, you have to find somewhere to put it. It cannot always feel great, but we're trying to do our best.
Yeah. So anybody else can jump in. I mean, you don't have to. I don't have to serve as the go-between here.
It is Erin brings up the deal making side. It's been an issue, right? The talent signs on, and then you drop something to streaming instead, and you don't have any box office metrics for participation and back end. So we've had to just come up with some ways of doing stuff, but prospectively, it's tough to make deals with people that are used to getting, you try to make a deal at the front end that's cheap and keep your negative costs down, and then everybody wins in success. But if we don't know have a model for success anymore, it's a tricky one for writers. Everybody at Pixar is an employee except for actors and some outside writers, mm-hmm. And but it's tricky, and even gauging the performance of the work you do when it drops to streaming. There's traditional TV metrics, but they, if a film goes out and does, 500 million worldwide, you can kind of run the model about profitability and so forth. And TV and streaming are much more of a closed system than that. And it's just hard to make the same, judgments.
I have a question for the other panelists. Do you think that the streamers will ever open their books? Because that's, as Jim was saying, that becomes a complexity that everybody has in their contract, variety as of blah, 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 your domestic box office. And that's how your bonuses are figured. But the streamers are pretty much a closed closed shop. Sometimes they'll tell you like how many million viewers had access to your film, but they won't tell you, and I'm sure they must know which ones make money, which ones don't. But I wonder if you guys think those books will ever be open.
I haven't had any success on,
Right.
mine. They are very, we sold Borat to Amazon, and they've been very closed about their, the process where we, if we know that we broke records, we can't get them to say that out loud. It's a really interesting process. And I mean, honestly, I just literally right before this before this panel, I got a call because I have a movie that's coming out in the spring, and our international deal kind of dissolved because of the pandemic, and numbers were going down. And we just made a deal for all the international for a streamer. And, I said, well, the only problem is there's no upside. There's no downside. We just kind of know exactly what it is, and we don't have any chance of earning in success, which is what you get when you're selling for, in other territories or not to a streamer. So it's sort of the mixed bag, but it's like, okay, well, we know what it is, and we're just going to have to take it. And, it's a press of a button, and that's where it goes.
Yeah, because Netflix is making a $200 million movie with the Russos. And so the money seems to be there, and it seems like I say, that they know what everything is making and what everything is not. I wonder if it is, because I keep wondering if there is going to be, everybody keeps talking about the fall, that we're going to open back up in the fall, and it's, everything's going to be back to normal, but I'm not sure, because I don't have any friends who are like eager to go out and, blow it on the, at the end of the marathon, whatever, that we've come this far. And then now I'm going to go to a movie theater and some guy's going to sneeze on the back of my head, and then it's going to, and then it's all over. So,
Feel the same way once you're vaccinated?
I do. Well, that'll be the thing, right?
Because Wonder Woman made 30 million. It's at like between 30 and 40 million dollars right now. And that opened at Christmas when, LA was an epicenter, and it was also streaming for free on HBO Max. Like, that gives me hope that the people in the middle ground didn't go, but I'm going the second that I get my vaccine. I'm desperate to be back at a theater.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because like Jim was saying, there's that cathartic experience that you get from a theater, hearing a bunch of people laugh, not just me and my wife, and, hearing people cheer, seeing those great movies, and kind of having that experience of walking out of the theater and, hey man, wasn't that great? You miss that. No, you can have the biggest TV in the world in your living room. It's not going to equate to a theater. But yeah, you're right. I think that, hopefully, I assume that there's going to be a little bit of time when everybody's going to wait and see after the vaccinations. Because what was it? Some congressman just got it after the second vaccination. So there'll be a little bit of cautiousness. But
he didn't die, which is the thing the vaccine promises.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We have that. But I do wonder if some people will be lost for a little while, maybe a year or so, to streamers, and then others will, kind of slowly come out into the light. You've seen people in drive-in theaters now, people in larger theaters, and that kind of thing. People with redesigns of going into redesigned theaters. Also, people renting theaters. $350, you can get a whole theater to yourself, you and your friends. I'm seeing a lot of that, which is interesting.
That's speaking to what I was asking as my first question to everybody, was related to what the consequences might be of having to deal with the pandemic, and whether or not these kinds of issues, or whether you're renting or buying a theater for a night or a few hours, or whatever you may decide to do, is something that's very different from what you can do now, right? So, or I shouldn't say now, this minute, but before the pandemic.
But
Yeah.
there's been some great things that's come out of it. I mean, all of us being able to work remotely, being able to have these conferences and be able to have the immediacy. I have people working in, Australia, UK. We're all able to be in the same room, which we didn't visualize before. It was like somebody would be on a random speakerphone in the middle of the table, and it wasn't quite the same as now being able to face everybody and be in a Zoom. And we're all not able to go to Sundance, but we're all, maybe everybody on this panel wouldn't have been at Sundance this year,
Right.
and so it's actually a great tool. I actually produced a virtual special for women in film, and we just did it this way exactly through Zoom, and we put it on the CW, and it was fantastic, about Hire Her Back initiative. But this was a great way to work. And also there's like these remote, I'm sure my fellow panelists have been in like Evercast rooms where we're able to live watch and edit and pick, sit with the editors or sit with the music editors or sit in a scoring session and watch it through Evercast. So there's like a lot of great innovations that have, necessity is the mother of invention. We've really had that opportunity during this time. So there's some good things.
It's a miracle. I think about if this had happened 10 years ago, we'd all be desolate and out of work. And no, we lucked out, I mean, I don't mean to say that blithely, because I know there's a lot of people, people that work in restaurants and people, a lot of just regular people that don't have the opportunities that we do to kind of continue to work like this. So that's a drag, but we're, even those of you in live action have been able to kind of keep it going and on some level, and it's great. I'm really grateful.
But as Monica mentioned earlier when this discussion, for the independent filmmaker, things are a lot different, and they're not as easy as they are for the animator or for somebody who's got enough budget to be able to deal with these costs and know that they're going to make up the money on international viewings and all of what's possible with the money that can be spent to bring in the audience. But if you're independent, you're making a film for under $1 million, it's a whole other story. And I think that recovering from the pandemic and being able to find the resources to make these films is going to be very difficult. Maybe not as difficult as it is at the moment once we have everyone with the vaccine, but it's still not easy.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that also, though, that might breed creativity. It might make new projects and new scripts that are going to bring in, that are going to use the mediums that they have, or a couple people in a room. I mean, Malcolm and Marie was born out of the pandemic, and I think there's going to be more of that. I think that people are going to say, okay, let me figure out how to do something that is easy to do during this time. And the people that have the bigger independent films that have been sort of saturating the marketplace at Sundance might not exist. But we might be going back to like these very indie movies that sort of was the, what put Sundance on the map too.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments to make? Because I think there is a big difference depending on your budget, right? I mean, if you're making a film for 500,000 or $1 million or $1.5 million or 2 million, that's a whole other story than making your 40, 50 million or above film. So we're talking about distribution and how people can see films. But the creative process is going to be strongly affected by all of this, I think. So I'm curious as to what you think might go on here. What people might do. What are some of the ideas that people can explore?
Well, from a screenwriting standpoint, it's interesting because it is one of the first conversations you have. Is does this story take place during quarantine? Are we going to acknowledge COVID in it? Are they going to be masked? Are they going to, socially distance, whatever? I know that myself, I get nervous even when I see black and white movies with crowds. That might be a little PTSD that we experience for a little while. But I know that maybe the bright light is that there is an end of the tunnel, that for independent filmmakers, it's the next film you make, but it's not the next film. That this year is going to be tough on everybody. But like the two projects, the two kind of fantasy films that I'm doing, they have 2023 releases. And because of that, like the writing is now, they're going to shoot it, and then there's going to be effects. So they're basically assuming that everything is going to be solved by the time we go into production with these. And I'm assuming that for independent filmmakers, this year is going to completely stink. It's going to be a question of, can you make a movie where people aren't going to get nervous watching it in either way, where they're not going to say, oh no, people with masks, you can't emote with a mask on. You just can't tell the story if you're wearing a mask. And secondly, oh no, there's 80 people in an enclosed room. Even if it's church, you're thinking, oh, okay, COVID. So that's not fun. But like I say, light at the end of the tunnel, one film, but then your next year's film, hopefully unencumbered.
I would say too, because I imagine there are aspiring indie filmmakers paying attention. I do think that, and Monica touched on this, I think the biggest hurdle in this moment is insurance and bonding, just because that has been the death of many independent films. I think that, to echo what Rob is saying, I think all of these streamers, all of whom, even though they all have their own pipelines of development, don't have enough of their own content in order to fill their services, are desperate for content. And so I've seen a shift in the best way possible, going back to content creators are king right now. And so yes, for a moment, it's been a little bit harder to get them made by virtue of some risk, but there's always capital finds its way to need when that's necessary. And so I have all the faith in the world that once people are vaccinated, we're having those conversations now, can we legally require that people be vaccinated? Because then your risk is mitigated, even if there's a carve out for COVID and or all communicable diseases. I think bond companies will take that risk. So I'm really optimistic for independent film once we're past this moment.
Our students have the COVID guidelines that came through UCLA, USC, and work within those guidelines. But and now you watch TV, watch Saturday Night Live or some other program where there are a large cast, and the cast doesn't seem to be abiding by any social distance practice or wearing the mask or whatever it takes to stay healthy. And so I think that there's a lot that's happening that is sort of on the borderline of whether you're adhering to COVID practices or not, or what you have to do to be tested, all the other things that go with producing a product that does meet the requirements and the insurance requirements.
It really, Monica can we had 3 in production when the shutdown happened, and then have since made 9. Got all 3 of those back up and running. We lost 1 that was prepping, but have just decided to push forward. And we've pushed past crowd scenes, sometimes by absorbing that cost via VFX and just filling in crowds. And then sometimes just via massive testing. There's always a cost to it, but we have found that if there's a will, there's a way. But it does rely wholly on everyone on the ground being safe. We had one movie where every protocol and then some were in place. And then our director got COVID and had to direct remotely. And we found out it was because at the end of the day, some of the day players were going to dinner after. And it's I can't control that. They were in Serbia. I don't even know how to control that. So you take on some risk.
Yeah. And certainly in animation, it's so different, right? With what Jim and Rob do, you guys aren't dependent on live actors on set. So
yeah, but it's not that it's the same by any means, but it's been non-trivial to do our voice actors.
yeah,
You know, we've had to build little rigs where we would send them to actors' homes where they would kind of do their own recording, and we'd, you know, have one iPad with the director's face trying to direct them, and another little rig trying to record their sound and so forth. And it's tricky to do. I mean, it's nothing compared to what they've had to deal with in live action. And we've had other, you know, bottlenecks that everybody has, just working remote. You know, when you're doing an animated project, you're feeding a lot of shots from different people to an editor to put it all together, but lots of bandwidth issues with that kind of stuff. And again, I'm very happy. It's, you know, we're really lucky, but compared to what so many people have had to struggle with, but we've had our pains in the neck about that as well, for sure.
well, we have about 20 minutes left, so let's open this up to some of the questions that we're getting online, and we're getting a number of them. And I know that Tracy's got a couple of questions that she wants to respond to. Tracy, do you want to start us off? Are you there? Hello.
She's muted.
Hi,
Okay.
hi, Owen. I just wanted to make sure that you got to the chat box.
Yeah, everybody can.
We have
I'm on the Q&A box right now.
yes, we have a number of questions here. If you want to pick one that goes live, but I will answer the question about, is our entire panel SU alums? Indeed, they are. And I'll turn it back to you, Owen, to
Wrapping the cues.
Okay.
got a lot about indie production, theater distribution, and animated content. So,
Right. And the indie production is really important because, you know, again, that's where a lot of our students are probably headed or would like to go to. When do you folks think, Cortez Campos asks, when you think the film industry will return to normal, whatever that may mean?
It'll be a while until we see it back to, I mean, I don't know. I think if we're lucky, in 15 to 18 months, we might start to see a reasonably robust theatrical experience again. Of course, I was the guy that when we went out, when we all left our office, I was like, yeah, we'll be back in 4 weeks. So, you know, it's going to be great. So that I was disabused of that notion rather.
Yeah, and I just think there's going to be a new normal. You know, I just think that we may not see exactly what we saw before, but we're going to see, you know, our own versions. I mean, also Netflix, we talked about this earlier, but Netflix and Amazon have, you know, completely different models than what the theatrical business is. And so Netflix is going to max out and probably has close to maxed out on their subscriptions in the US. So it's going to be rising prices or burgeoning other markets, and, you know, growing in India, growing in China, growing wherever they can to build that, you know, but there's going to be, you know, a time where they can't spend the same amount unless they keep raising the prices, and then maybe there'll be drops and whatever. And Amazon has a completely different business, you know, that's feeding their and Apple, same thing. So everybody's going to have a different way of going about it, and theatrical, you know, independent films will always survive because that's where new people will come onto the marketplace, come up with an inventive thing to do, or make something special on their own. With, you have an iPhone, you can go make anything you want, and you know, the independent market will always be there. I mean, it's the great thing. So I think it's just going to be different, but I think it's going to come back robustly because people love content.
You know, that's a very important point you just brought up, Monica, about, you know, making a film with an iPhone, which of course has been done and you know, will continue to be done. But that's certainly something that an independent filmmaker can do. And there's no reason why, if the film is based on a creatively written script and it's got good actors in it, well directed, it can get attention.
Absolutely.
You know.
And I'll add. I mean, don't forget that Netflix announced that they're releasing a film a week, you know. So they're right now at least in a lot of the stuff I'm working on, they're at the beginning of the conversation, like, okay, great, is this going to be a Netflix film, at least for the next year? I assume that Amazon is gonna catch up. They're probably going to be in the next in the queue. Probably Disney Plus will be right there behind them, and then Hulu and some of the others. So there is a hunger for content right now that I didn't see a decade ago. Where you would go to a studio and they would maybe make 6 movies and they would kind of push you off into some kind of indie deal, hopefully. But right now, A, diversity of content, B, just a hunger that everybody has had that experience where you watch a Netflix film and then the next thing they suggest is something that you would never watch. Well, they're aware of that, and they are trying to make sure that the next thing that you watch, that you're going to stay there. And so it's a good time if you're making good films at whatever budget. It just takes 1 week. You just need to survive 1 week. And sometimes weird wants weird. So if you've just watched a weird film, you want to watch another, not to say, that an Owen Shapiro film is weird, but which,
Thanks a lot.
But if you're watching boutique indie, I'll say it that way, then you want to watch something else that's in that category. And so there is just a hunger for that. Right. So stick with it, please.
My hope though, and I think new normal is a good thing. I do think that there's a chance where this pushes financiers and studios to take more risk, because I think that theatrical distribution and an opening weekend at a box office is no longer the only route to success. And I think, Sean Bailey at Disney now can greenlight more things as he pushes them to Disney Plus, either when the movie announces itself as not worthy of theatrical, or when Disney Plus says it needs a shiny object and can take something from him. We're all looking at what your options are differently, and I hope it helps us push more things forward.
I have a question from a student that's sort of similar to, in the same ballpark as what we've been talking about, from Kyle Puchta, who says that over the years, there's been a film budget divide that keeps widening, nearly eliminating mid-budget films. It feels like it's either blockbuster or mini or micro budget. But now I'm wondering if you all, particularly those working with studios, are more willing to take chances on middle of the road budget films.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the middle's kind of fallen out of theatrical and become the domain of the Netflixes and Amazons and so forth when you get down to it. You wouldn't see an Ordinary People necessarily get made and go theatrical now. It would end up on a streamer probably. I think.
So you could make it, but you'd have to make it and send it to Sundance.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
So tell me all the recent middle budget films that have done well theatrically. That's the thing I look at. It just, I don't see it. I don't mean in the pandemic, but even prior to that, I just wasn't seeing a lot there. And those are the films that I tend to like the most, but it's slim pickings because the tentpole pictures are so domineering of rooms and stuff. I mean, maybe you see it differently. It just feels like it's morphed a lot.
I think when you're Universal, when you're Disney, when you're even Sony and you have massive IP that takes up 8 of your 12 slots, certainly then the mid-range one to compete for the remaining 4 slots, it just changes the equation. But the audience still shows, there are still surefire audiences when you build something at a price. It's why I wanted to go to Lionsgate, because it lived in this place where it's we don't really have IP. So we got Knives Out, not because we were the highest bidder or even the best home. It was because everyone else passed and we saw value where no one else did, because it was this is a sneaky family film and families show up for these movies so you can make an event. Same with, I inherited John Wick and I feel lucky to have done so, but you have to be smarter about the budget and you have to know who your audience is. And so it takes a lot more in-depth conversation and critical processing. But I'm not going to give up on them. Certainly we'll see when box office returns and audiences have been conditioned to find great stuff on streamers, but I'm going to remain optimistic.
No, I think, and I agree with you. You're absolutely, and that's a great example. I just feel like it's, you start looking at the release slates and trying to find a date where it's not going to get overpowered. You really, as you're saying, you really have to handcraft to that audience and figure out how to get them out. Because I think it's not the default anymore.
No.
Right? It takes a lot of effort and focus to do that. And that's why I think so much of that mid-level stuff does end up going to streamers, which is a drag in a lot of ways, I think.
I mean, I spent the last 6 years making movies, Captain Fantastic, Trumbo, Brian Banks, Beirut, like these movies that are, we were calling them independent. We were doing them for about 10 to 15 or 8 to 15, depending on whatever. I just did a movie called Wander Darkly, actually, that was with Lionsgate, but a different division than Erin's. But, those movies just aren't playing, they're making maybe 5-6 million at the box office. So they are, you have to do them for a price. That is the Ordinary People one. Knives Out is a little more genre, a little more fun, a little more actiony. And, it's just a very different movie than Ordinary People. And that's why I said, it's tough because you really do have to make it for a price. And that $10 million movie maybe needs to be made for 6 now in order to survive in the marketplace, because you're not going to be able to make it for 30, which is what you might have been able to make it for 15 years ago.
Unless you're making a film for a very specific audience. I mean, here we have American High, which is producing films in Syracuse and shooting in Syracuse. These are all films that are made for children. Well, not children, but kids who are, 14, 15, 18, early 20s, maybe in some cases. But it's a very specific audience that the films are directed toward. So they have a chance for a $2 million project or a $3 million or a $5 million project to really make money on those kinds of films, and they make them really, with a lot of skill, and they're all interesting films for that audience. Or you're making a zombie movie or horror film, so your audience can be very particular, and you don't have to worry so much about the larger budget, films to make your money back and make a profit.
Right. Obviously.
Well, to that,
yeah.
I was going to say to that end, what I'm finding a lot is, as far as writing, because I comedy and action, whatever, fantasy, and a lot of times people are like, "Hey, we want to slip in this kind of movie and piggyback it on top of this other kind of movie," and just genre benders. And sometimes those will work because hopefully you can get both types of audience in, or you can not necessarily trick an audience, but you can get an audience that would not normally, see a mystery movie in, because, wow, hey, Chris Evans, hey, Captain America is in a cool sweater and, whatever, and boom. And, you're in the audience at least because you're a fan from the other thing. That's hopefully that's, a creative solution to potentially, death. It's just sad situation with box office. So yeah.
I have a question from a friend, Tula Goenka, who's on the faculty at Newhouse, and she wants to know, do you think that the Motion Picture Academy will change its requirements for theatrical release to qualify for Oscars? And I assume that she's meaning theatrical release
this year, at least.
Yeah, right. Go ahead, Jim.
I said this year at least. They're obviously they don't have a lot of theatrical releases to compete, and so they've changed some of the requirements this year. They've got an ongoing issue to deal with, right? With a lot of filmmakers making stuff for streaming. The divide between TV and features was a little more crisp than between some of the streaming and theatrical. So it's tricky how how do you acknowledge storytelling, I guess is how you'd say it. So I think they're going to have to grapple with that for a while. I'm on the finance committee of the Academy, so I get a little catbird seat into seeing the difficult things they grapple with there, and the many points of view about how they should be grappled with. But I think it's going to be an ongoing issue for a while.
How are you going to tell Scorsese that he can't compete? He can only compete in TV movie category at the end.
You can only go for an Emmy.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Like they're going to have to open it up because all these massive, amazing creators are making deals at the streamers right now. And so how do you do that? Or the forced, all the people that were on Warner Brothers that were forced into HBO Max deals,
Well, after COVID's done, they'll four-wall Marty's pictures, right? Just to make sure that he gets consideration. But
correct.
Yeah.
I have a question from Doria Lacey. For us students graduating this year, do you have any advice on breaking into the industry with so many layoffs that have happened due to COVID? This question.
Well, I'd say I'd encourage him to go into animation at the moment.
Well, it's really tough because most of the first gigs you get are an assistant, working for somebody else, working on somebody else's desk. And those things are just not, nobody's having anybody over to their house right now. As far as breaking in, I know that some people are working virtually. You can't kind of just waltz into somebody's office anymore, but most people are, I find a lot of people are open to the cold call. So, you see somebody that you like, that you want to work with, you can always find them on social media, which was not available a couple of years ago. Just sound them out, just send them an email or send them a DM and see if, see if at least they can offer some advice. And I know that I've hired a couple of people this year, pretty much virtually, and just, do this, and this, and then you send them a check. So, I don't know.
Well, look, folks, it's almost 8, and this is a very fun way to work, and it's also a little confusing at times, at least for me. But it's great to see everybody here, and I really want to thank all of you for being willing to be a part of this and for going along for the ride, and the Dean of Newhouse and the Dean of VPA to help organize this, along with Tracy and everybody else who's been involved in the production of this session. And I want to thank you for taking time out from your busy day to participate in this panel, and wish everybody to stay healthy and stay safe. And love that beard. Love it. Fantastic.
It's my Owen beard.
So again, thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
So Owen, before we sign off, I have to do this to you, and that is everyone needs to know that Owen Shapiro is retiring from Syracuse University in May. So maybe we could give him a virtual applause.
Thank you, appreciate that. I love your background there, by the way. It's great background.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
No, it used to take a lot of work
does
to
not
do a
look like
composite
that right now.
No, you should see the snow. There's quite a bit of it here. Believe me.
Congratulations, Owen.
I don't know about the congratulations. Thanks a lot, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to meet everybody. Adios.
Nice to meet you guys. All right. Bye.